What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, the series in which I give you an appetizer sampler glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. The goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into the Force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that Force as well. So, up on the chopping block this time is going to be, by viewer request, the Mantis Warriors Space Marine chapter. A pretty interesting chapter. I like to look at the Mantis Warriors as a force that, if White Scars interest you, but you don't really like their color scheme, or perhaps you don't like kind of how they do certain things, visually with the White Scars, but you like kind of the White Scars way of fighting, then I like to kind of point people in the direction of the Mantis Warriors, because completely different color scheme, not exactly the same at all to the White Scars in terms of being bikers necessarily, but they have kind of a way of waging war that I think if you're interested in White Scars, you would find interesting in the Mantis Warriors. So, yeah, that's my thoughts there. So the Mantis Warriors are, as you probably guessed by my little ramble there, they are successors of White Scars through the Marauders, which are a White Scars successor. So they're the White Scars descent. And they are founded allegedly in the 8th founding for the direct purpose of relieving the White Scars from the area of the Maelstrom Warp Storm, which is a secluded area of space. So they were founded to take over the watch over there from the White Scars. And this is where they basically formed bonds of brotherhood with the Astral Claws and the Lamenters, which is why they're on the wrong side of the Badab War. So, the visual scheme, if you will, the paint scheme, the color scheme of the Mantis Warriors is a little bit kind of like the original color scheme, which was pure green, in the fact that it's green armor, but it also has yellow shoulder pad insets and a yellow faceplate with black backpacks and black Crux Terminatus. Their weapons are also yellow, and their helmet lenses are a darker red. And I think this inclusion of the yellow also harkens back to the original color scheme, as well as one of the variant color schemes for the Mantis Warriors for camouflage, which was yellow with black markings on it. So, I like their current color scheme. Yes, there's yellow on it, but it's not too much yellow where you would have to run and hide if you're not a fan of painting yellow, or you think you're not. I mean, if you're not a fan of painting yellow, you probably don't want to collect them, but if you're concerned about painting yellow, you think it'll be too difficult, there's not that much yellow on Mantis Warriors. You'll be able to get by and do fine. So, their squad markings are black, which is an easy thing to achieve. All you need to do is use the regular squad markings, really, that you get in the tactical squad box and so on and so forth, and just paint over them with black paint and you'll be just fine. So that's one thing. Their chapter symbol is a little complicated. It's a head of a mantis in black with red eyes. The reason I say it's a bit complicated is because of the red eye part mostly, and the shape. A mantis head isn't exactly easy to freehand. So what you can do is try and freehand it, or you can do a little bit of searching online and you'll find that there are fan-made decal sheets for the Mantis Warriors that you can download and print on clear decal paper, seal it, and then make use of it that way, so you have their symbol easy enough on hand. I mean, it takes a bit of extra work, but you don't have to worry about trying to freehand something that's kind of complicated. So that's pretty cool. So with that said, that's their visuals, and one thing I didn't touch on is their chest emblem. It's kind of like a gold, like a darker gold. So there you go. Now, in terms of their way of doing things, they are very mobile style of force in terms of their fighting. They fight in a very hit-and-run guerrilla style. Death of a thousand cuts is their whole shtick. This is partly due to tactics and the way they like to do things, partly due to their White Scars lineage, you could say, and also partly due to necessity. Being in a remote area of space, they don't have much in terms of potential support coming their way. right? Even with the other chapters in the same sector, the Mantis warriors have to fend for themselves, and they are very much a I don't want to say isolationist chapter, but they do very much believe in being self-sufficient, and again, partly out of necessity. So because of this, they are constantly kind of under strength due to the attrition style of being on your own in a sector space, constantly guarding against a maelstrom warp storm, and therefore they have, lesser strength companies than a full strength company. On top of that, they don't have much in the way of heavy armor. They have very few land raiders and predators, so necessity from there as well kind of breeds their combat style of guerrilla tactics and hit and run. They do the death of 1,000 cuts, like I mentioned, and what they do is basically gain as much of a tactical advantage as they can, and once they feel like they've got to their maximum tactical advantage over the enemy from numerous hit and run raid style fighting, they'll attack them in a furious assault and finish them off. So very much tend to do the fighting on their terms. What I find interesting about that is they also have kind of a sense of honor that's at odds with that. They defend the Endymion cluster, which is where they're located, and that means doing things against their way of fighting. When the Carcharodons were attacking them in the Badab War, the Mantis warriors went to ground. They did what they do best, which is harassment, hit and run. So the Carcharodons and the rest of the Loyalist forces got fed up and started doing, the more brutal Loyalist forces started doing fire tactics, firebomb tactics in essence. Basically, just outright obliterating the planets, like orbital bombardment, attacking just the cities, and just rolling bombardment, wiping out the planets that way, forcing the Mantis warriors to honor their charge of defending the area and fighting out in the open as opposed to being hit and run. And I find that interesting because they could have easily just stayed hit and run harassment style, but they went out in the open to defend the people. So I find them to be kind of an honorable chapter in that regard. So that's just something of note. I find something kind of interesting there. With that, we have some information on a flaw within the chapter of Gene Seed, which is weird because the White Scars don't necessarily have this flaw, but for whatever reason the Mantis warriors do. It's something that can be referred to as a battle haze and is permanent. When it afflicts a Mantis warrior, their speed and their power gets enhanced. They seem almost precognitive, dodging things before they're actually there. But it's a flaw. It's not a boon, because their vision, essentially their sight, becomes so tunneled that and so honed to a point that if you're not a foe, if you're not an enemy, they don't really recognize you. They don't really notice anything that's not their target. In a sense, they're almost blind outside of the mission at hand and what they're fighting. So it's a weird flaw. There's nothing really to represent what is called a Mantis Religiosa in terms of Forge World rules, or really with the codex at hand that you would use, but it's something that's just interesting to bring up, and is a permanent affliction to those Mantis warriors that are afflicted by it. But it's not like the flaw of the Blood Angel Gene Seed, which is slowly taking over the chapter, it seems. Like they seem pretty damned and hopeless against the Red Thirst and the Black Rage. The Battle Haze of the Mantis warriors is not that type of it's not that type of affliction for the chapter. It's just something that they kind of have, and really not much is stated about it. So just something worth bringing up for fun. Anyways, pre-Badab War, the Mantis warriors had a lot of their number in the service of the Deathwatch. They were second only to the Crimson Fist in the amount of their chapter that was seconded to the Deathwatch. They sent a lot of their recruits, a lot of their Marines to the Deathwatch. The only chapter to send more was the Crimson Fists. Post-Badab War, they were no longer allowed to serve in the Deathwatch for a period of time until their Penance Crusade was over. And what I find kind of interesting is the fluff of the three forces that went on Penance Crusade, the Executioners, the Lamenters, and the Mantis Warriors, is a bit different because the Mantis Warriors fluff heavily implies that they are done with their penance crusade, where the executioners are nearly done, and the lamenters are also kind of sort of done, but also their whereabouts are a bit unknown now because of how cursed they are and everything like that. But it's just weird that it listed the Mantis Warriors kind of are heavily implied to be done with their penance crusade, although it's the same penance crusade that they undertook alongside the other chapters. But whatever, since their penance crusade is kind of heavily implied to be done, they're able to basically second their Marines back into the Deathwatch, although they're really now going to have to rebuild because their chapter was heavily depleted during the penance crusade. So, with that said, why, real quick, were they on the wrong side of the Badab War? Well, they formed that bond of brotherhood, as I mentioned, with the Actual Claws and the Lamenters, and the Mantis Warriors didn't know that the Actual Claws were succumbing to chaos, and therefore were basically used by that bond of brotherhood. So that's something that basically is what happened, you could say. But anyways, that's the Mantis Warriors fighting style. That's kind of how they view things. On a final note, even though that they're kind of viewed as loyal by the Imperium at large again, the Mantis Warriors have a very harsh view of themselves. They still view themselves as a cursed force because of what happened in the Badab War, because that they strayed from the Emperor's light, or they allowed themselves to be guided away temporarily from the Emperor's light in that regard. They view themselves as a damned chapter in their own eyes, so they view themselves incredibly harshly. Anyways, with that said, if this sounds like a force you'd be interested in, if you like the whole guerrilla style hit and run death of 1,000 cuts that they do, and then you're going to want to know how to collect them, or at least have some suggestions. I mean, obviously you could figure out yourself. This isn't law, what I'm saying, but I definitely recommend the regular Space Marine Codex, because even though they fight with some similar characteristics to the White Scars, minus the biker heavy thing, they follow the Codex Astartes much closer than the White Scars do. So I recommend the regular Space Marine Codex, and then you could go with either the White Scars chapter tactics or the Ultramarines chapter tactics. I like the White Scars one. I still think it works well for representing what the Mantis Warriors can do in terms of chapter tactics, but really the choice is yours. I recommend this over the obvious thought of Forge World Zone chapter tactics for the Mantis Warriors, because while they do have Mantis Warrior chapter tactics on Forge World's website, it's something that you're going to basically only use in casual pickup games, and that's about it. So to build a force you can use no matter what the situation is, campaign, tournament, what have you, regular Space Marine Codex with the White Scars chapter tactics is what I recommend concentrating on. Now, in terms of collecting them model-wise, there's nothing out there that's specifically Mantis Warriors. So any of the regular bits and kits from GW and Forge World will work just fine for the Mantis Warriors Space Marines. Keeping in mind, they don't have much in terms of heavy armor like Predators and Land Raiders. They're more of a mobile, light armored force in that regard. So just some things to keep in mind. Other than that, print out the decal from the fan-made decal sheets on clear decal paper, and that will be the most, I would say, in-depth technical thing you have to do for representing how the Mantis Warriors look, and that won't be that bad to do either. Anyways, that aside, you just buy any of the generic bits and kits, pin them up as Mantis Warriors, and they'll look pretty cool. So that's it for the Mantis Warriors chapter, a chapter that I do enjoy. I like Praying Mantis, the real insect anyway, so having a chapter that's got a namesake based off of that and everything, caught my interest, and when I looked into them back in the day, I found them pretty interesting. Anyways, that's it for the Mantis Warriors, so thanks for sticking through it. Hopefully you've enjoyed and it wasn't too boring or all over the place for you. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, leave them in the comments section, and until next time, take it easy.